The ancient serpent. Who was it? Where is it today? Does it still exist? The serpent of Genesis is a true enigma. Some see it as a mere animal wandering by. Others believe it represents Satan or a symbol of evil. Some argue it's simply a mythological story that never happened. But what is the truth? Sometimes we miss a great deal of what the biblical texts aim to teach us because we failed to read them in their original language with proper understanding. Today we will explore a revolutionary way of interpreting this figure, who it was, what it symbolizes, and most importantly, how it might relate to our lives. Is it a relic of history or something we still face daily? Let us find out. Now, let us turn to the biblical text. I want to read a few verses, especially the one where the serpent appears for the first time. At the end of chapter 2, it says something like, "And the two were naked, Adam and his wife, and they were not ashamed." It's not certain that "not ashamed" is the correct translation, but that's not our focus here. What matters is the word naked, or arumim, in Hebrew. Keep this term in mind as it reappears in the next verse with a different meaning. In chapter 3, the serpent is introduced. Now, the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field. The word for cunning in Hebrew is arum, which shares the same root as arumim, naked. This is no coincidence. The Torah deliberately uses the same word to connect two concepts: the nakedness of humans and the cunning of the serpent. This parallel shows that nakedness symbolizes the natural, animalistic state of humans. At that time, Adam and Eve were unaware of this state because they lived in a higher consciousness. Their animal instincts were externalized, represented by the serpent. In this sense, the serpent symbolizes the lower animal side of humanity. Who is the most cunning of all animals? Humans. The animalistic aspect of humans is their lowest nature, but the highest among other animals. The serpent is not a mythological being or an external entity, but represents the basest part of humanity. This idea is supported by the Zohar and other sources. Nakedness also relates to materiality. In Genesis 2:7, the body of Adam is described as being created from the dust of the ground, representing the material consciousness of humanity. After Adam sinned, as noted in Genesis 3:23, he was expelled from the Garden of Eden, signifying a descent from a higher state of being to a material one. Thus, the serpent represents humanity's animal instincts, material attachment, and base nature. Adam and Eve symbolize different parts of humanity. As Genesis 5 notes, Adam and Eve were initially one, later separated into two. Adam represents the intellect, while Eve symbolizes emotion. The serpent represents the corporeal, instinctive aspect of humans. The serpent approaches Eve rather than Adam, as instincts appeal to emotions, persuading them with promises of pleasure. Emotions then influence the intellect, convincing it that these desires are logical. This dynamic is deeply embedded in the Hebrew text and supported by Kabbalistic teachings. The Zohar calls the human body's materiality the skin of the serpent. The serpent losing its legs and crawling on the ground symbolizes a fall into materiality. Humanity's struggle lies in choosing between being dominated by this material nature or elevating it. When elevated, the serpent ceases to be an obstacle and becomes a tool for divine connection. The Hebrew word for serpent, nahash, shares a numerical value with Messiah, Mashiach. Elevating our material nature transforms it into a vehicle for spiritual growth, aligning with the ultimate purpose of creation, to make the lower realms a dwelling place for God. The Zohar notes that the serpent represents humanity's material instincts, pulling us toward the physical and away from the divine. This struggle requires spiritual effort to elevate the material and integrate it into our divine purpose. Materiality itself is not evil. It is neutral, a tool that can either draw us closer to or away from God. The Hebrew word for world, olam, relates to concealment, helam, as this world conceals God's light. This concealment isn't inherently bad. It filters divine light, making it accessible. If misused, the material becomes a barrier. But when elevated, it reveals divine light. In Kabbalah, this transformation is called the Serpent of Holiness, where material instincts are used for spiritual purposes. The serpent, once elevated, leads to redemption. The transformation of the serpent represents the fulfillment of humanity's divine mission. The Zohar notes that the same serpent in Genesis is associated with Satan, described as the angel of blindness, whose role is to separate humanity from God. Overcoming this separation requires elevating human nature and aligning it with divine purpose. This spiritual work is personal and collective. It involves elevating the skin of the serpent, our material nature, through conscious actions. By transforming base instincts into tools for spiritual growth, we contribute to a broader transformation of humanity, bring it closer to divine purpose. Ultimately, this leads to the revelation of the Messiah and the unification of God's presence in all aspects of life. If you like this content, please help us to bring more easy academic content like this one. Subscribe and click the like button. The Creator, our Heavenly Father, bless your mind and spirit.